Hey, Room 10, and welcome to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, our novel study, chapter 1 through 3. I'm so excited to introduce this book to you because this is one of my favorite stories, especially for character study. So, character study is learning about the characters in a story, what they like, what they dislike, what their personality might be like, and how they relate to others. One of the reasons I really love this book for character studies is the characters are so different. If we open the book, the author Roald Dahl does a really cool thing where he lists some of the main characters on one of the first pages. That's kind of cool. It says there are 5 children in this book: Augustus Gloop, a greedy boy; Veruca Salt, a girl who is spoiled by her parents; Violet Beauregard, a girl who chews gum all day long. Man, her jaw must be sore. Mike TV, a boy who does nothing but watch television. Ugh, how boring. Get outside, Mike TV. And, of course, our star, Charlie Bucket, the hero. So we're going to learn about all these characters as we read the story. So let's, without further ado, drum roll. It's a good drum roll. Chapter 1, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Chapter 1, here comes Charlie. These 2 very old people are the father and mother of Mr. Bucket. Their names are Grandpa Joe and Grandma Josephine. Grandpa Joe, Grandma Josephine. And these 2 very old people are the father and mother of Miss Bucket. Their names are Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina. This is Mr. Bucket and Mrs. Bucket. So here's the Grandma Grandpa. Here's Mr. Bucket and Mrs. Bucket. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket have a small boy whose name is Charlie Bucket, our hero. This is Charlie. How do you do? And how do you do? And how do you do again? He is pleased to meet you. The whole family, 6 grown-ups, counting them all, and little Charlie Bucket live together in one small wooden house on the edge of a great town. So Charlie and the house that all 6 people and Charlie live in. Wow. The house wasn't nearly large enough for so many people, and life was extremely uncomfortable for all of them. There were only 2 rooms in the place altogether, and there was only 1 bed. 1 bed for 7 people? Wow. The bed was given to the 4-year-old, the bed was given to the 4 grandparents because they were old and tired, but still 4 people in 1 bed? They were so tired, they never got out of the bed. Grandpa Joe and Grandma Josephine on this side. Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina on that side. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket and little Charlie Bucket slept in the other room upon mattresses on the floor. In the summertime, this wasn't too bad, but in the winter, freezing cold drafts blew across the floor all night long. And it was awful. There wasn't any question of them being able to buy a better house or even 1 more bed to sleep in. They were far too poor for that. Mr. Bucket was the only person in the family with a job. He worked in a toothpaste factory where he sat all day long at a bench and screwed the little caps on the top of toothpaste tubes after the toothpaste tubes had been filled with toothpaste. But a toothpaste cap screwer is never paid very much money, and poor Mr. Bucket, however hard he worked, and however fast he screwed the caps on, was never able to make enough to buy 1/2 of the things that such a large family needed. There wasn't even enough money to buy proper food for them all. The only meals they could afford were bread and margarine for breakfast, boiled potatoes and cabbage for lunch, and cabbage soup for supper. It's a lot of cabbage. Sundays were a bit better, and they all looked forward to Sundays because then, although they had exactly the same, everybody was allowed a second helping. The Buckets, of course, didn't starve, but every one of them, the 2 old grandfathers fathers, the two old grandmothers, Charlie's father, Charlie's mother, and especially little Charlie himself, went about from morning till night with a horrible, empty feeling in their tummies. Charlie felt it worst of all, and although his father and mother often went without their own share of lunch or supper so that they could give it to him, it wasn't nearly enough for a growing boy. So this is the bed that the 4 grandparents share, and then Charlie and his mom and dad having to sleep on a mattress. He desperately wanted something more filling and satisfying than cabbage and cabbage soup. The one thing he longed for, more than anything else in the world, was chocolate. Walking to school in the mornings, Charlie could see great slabs of chocolate piled up high in the shop windows. He would stop and stare and press his nose against the glass, his mouth watering like mad. Many times a day, he would see other children taking creamy candy bars out of their pockets and munching them greedily. And that, of course, was pure torture. Only once a year, on his birthday, did Charlie Bucket ever get to taste a bit of chocolate. The whole family saved up their money for that special occasion, and when the great day arrived, Charlie was presented with one small chocolate bar to eat all by himself. And each time he received it on those marvelous birthday mornings, he would place it carefully in a small wooden box that he owned and treasure it as though it were a bar of solid gold. And for the next few days, he would allow himself only to look at it, but never touch it. Then at last, when he could stand it no longer, he would peel a tiny bit of the wrapping paper at one corner to expose a tiny bite of chocolate. Here's a picture of his chocolate bar and the teeny tiny little bite. And then he would take a teeny nibble, just enough to allow the lovely sweet taste to spread out slowly over his tongue. The next day, he would take another teeny nibble, and so on and so on. And in that way, Charlie would make his birthday bar last for more than a month. Whoa, give Miss B a chocolate bar, and I dare you to count to 10 before it's gone. But I haven't yet told you about the one awful thing that tortured little Charlie, the lover of chocolate, more than anything else. This thing for him was far, far worse than seeing slabs of chocolate in the window or watching other children munching creamy candy bars right in front of him. It was the most terrible, torturing thing you could imagine. And it was this. In the town itself, well, actually within sight of his house, there was an enormous chocolate factory. Just imagine that. And it wasn't simply an ordinary enormous chocolate factory either. It was the largest and most famous in the whole world. It was called Wonka's Factory, owned by a man called Mr. Willy Wonka, the greatest inventor and maker of chocolates that there had ever been. And what a tremendous, marvelous place it was. It had huge iron gates leading into it, and a high wall surrounding it, and smoke belching, wow, what a good sentence, and smoke belching from its chimneys, and strange whizzing sounds coming from deep inside. And outside the walls, for half a mile around in every direction, the air was scented and heavy, rich smell of melting chocolate. Twice a day on his way to and from school, little Charlie Bucket had to walk right past the gates of the factory. And every time he went by, he would begin to walk very, very slowly. And he would hold his nose high in the air and take long, gorgeous sniffs of chocolate. Oh, how he loved that smell And oh, how he wished he could go inside the factory and see what it was like. End of chapter 1.